These are the top 10 tech companies across the globe. Among them, not even one is European. How is possible that the second biggest economy on the planet does not manage to have even one big tech innovator? And what does this mean for the future of the European continent? We will discover all of this in a very special episode today in Austria with our guest Ines Holzeger. And if you like our content, please watch, comment and subscribe.
Digital sovereignty is actually a big problem, meaning that we don't have it. When we have governments, administrations running on US technology, we have to be sure that they cannot just from one day to the next hit the kill switch. In Europe, we're not that risk enthusiastic. I mean, here in Austria, we like to have our money in the bank where it stays until we retire. I strongly believe that when the public sector funds European solutions, they become better. But it does cost some initial money to transition. I'm a member of the Liberal Austrian Party, and we have always said we need to become more efficient in defending Europe. We want an EU army. Yes, the EU is not perfect, but it's better than having nothing at all.
At just 32 years old, Ines Holzeger is one of the youngest members of the Austrian Parliament.
Das ist wirklich ein Skandal.
She advocates for a more innovative and digitalized Europe, where EU innovators can grow and maximize their potential while protecting citizens from the unwanted risk of technology. She symbolizes the young European spirit, wanting a stronger and more competitive Europe. Ines, welcome to Moving Europe podcast, and thanks a lot for hosting us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, here in Vienna, first time for us and first time for me in particular. Yeah. And we very much look forward to this episode where we will discuss about innovation and in particular how important is innovation for the future of Europe. We know you are a big expert here, so we are happy to have you on board. Let's directly start with the substance. US and China clearly are dominating the global innovation landscape. Is there still space for the EU?
I think so. We do have certain issues that we need to tackle. It's not a secret. I would say that we have a very fragmented market still. That we don't have a capital union as it should be. If you start a new company, if you have a great idea, then you probably won't find the funding in Europe. It also has to do a lot with risk aversion, I would say. But then you go somewhere else. But what I said before, that is the key part. And that's why I think there's still space in Europe, because we do have amazing ideas here. We have potential, and we just need to set the right framework so this potential stays here and doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah. And a unified Europe from an innovation and economics perspective will make us a power, as an innovative power, you think, if we would innovate with one face?
I think so. It's we do have a great market which has a lot of consumers as well. So of course, US and also Chinese companies want to be in our market. So sometimes I have the feeling we tend to think of the EU as a bit small in between China and the US. But I think it's artificial that we make ourselves small. And like I said, if we start putting the right rules in place and taking the right rules out to have less fragmentation, then this market is a real power. And I do believe we can do it, but
Yeah.
we have quite some time to
Quite some work to
Yeah.
do. But starting from the basic, the infrastructure of digital Europe, of technology in Europe, many of it, also governments, private sector, it relies on US digital infrastructure, social media, AI, like ChatGPT. So when the European Union talks about independence of digitalization and technology, are these just words, or is a real strategy behind?
Digital sovereignty is actually a big problem, meaning that we don't have it. We saw it with last year when Trump could just impose certain demands on the EU, and we had to follow, or it seemed that we had to follow. And I saw this whole discussion surrounding digital sovereignty actually as good. I always said, and I still say, we should have had this discussion 10 years ago, before we became dependent on these technologies. Because what I find most concerning is the dependence on certain software companies that could just, and we've seen this with the ICC, that could just say, well, tomorrow you're sanctioned. Because of the work you do. And this is something that we cannot let happen. It's when we have government administrations running on US technology, we have to be sure that they cannot just from one day to the next hit the kill switch and then it's done, because this is important infrastructure. And we have been we have turned a blind eye for very long. I think because it was just convenient, and now we changed. And I'm very optimistic, although it's a long way to go again. But at least we have this problem awareness in the population now.
And from a concrete policy perspective, like the power of lobbying of the big US tech giants like Meta, Google, Microsoft, but also the US government. Do you think you politicians are really able to stick for the EU interest force, or the power of lobbying is so strong that they still in the end favor more the US interest?
I would hope they can withstand it. I mean, these lobbyists, they of course also come to us and then try to say, well, we're all good, don't worry. Sometimes there's important discussions to be had, but as a politician, you should never just take everything for how they they sell it to you. But I'm elected by the people as a member of parliament, so these are the people that I have to explain to why I took certain decisions, and it's not the big tech that I'm responsible for.
For sure.
And yet it's crazy how strong and how pervasive this dependency is, right? I mean, it goes from banking sector to critical infrastructure to all kinds of sectors, and there I think the power to resist pressure becomes more and more difficult, right?
Yeah, it's again the dependency that we have. We don't have another option that we can take. It's always when there's real competition, and this is something us liberals love to talk about, competition, and it fuels innovation. But this is really the point. When there's more than one option that you can take, then it's way easier to just switch and to just get what is best for you. And it might be, I'm not against using any of the big tech platforms or software, but it's currently just really hard to go somewhere else. And that's why I think we need to really fuel, especially as a public sector, European solutions. Because I'm not pro forcing companies to go European. I strongly believe that when the public sector funds European solutions, they become better. Maybe one example. In Austria, we have the Ministry for Defense. They've started many years ago now to switch from Microsoft to open source software. And with that, it took some years, but with that, they also managed to improve that software. And now they're not dependent anymore. And I think it's a good example of how it could go. Yeah. But it does cost some initial money to transition.
Yeah. And were there like some political retaliation on this? Like on this try to switch from Windows to an open source, like on the US side? I imagine there was some pressure.
I wasn't in the ministry at that point, but Austria still has a lot of Microsoft licenses that are there. I cannot imagine that there's pressure because of one ministry switching.
And yet the question of technological differences between countries and of global power, I think you especially see it in instances of war. And now in the Middle East, we see the Iran war unfolding, but we saw also in Ukraine the huge role that Starlink played. Do you think that as Europe, we should also strive for technological innovation in order to become a stronger geopolitical power, maybe even a superpower?
Of course. I don't think the main goal is to become a superpower. I really think that when you do everything right and you have great competition, which leads to great innovation, better products that then get exported, and the knowledge gets exported, then you become more important on a global stage. Some way to go.
Somewhere to go, especially that now we see that the reality of modern warfare is drones, artificial intelligence. We saw a couple of months ago the Russian drones over the Danish airports. Yeah. Nobody knew how to react. So are we ready for this new reality?
Well, I'm a member of the Liberal Austrian Party, and we have always said we need to become more efficient in defending Europe. We want an EU army. We think that with all of the countries just fragmented armies, then we of course don't have the power we could have. I do think for now some steps would need to be taken, although of course many of the EU countries are also members of NATO.
Not Austria.
Not Austria.
Would you like to become a member of NATO?
I think currently that's not a discussion. For me, it's always more preferable to have an EU army, as we do have close allies there. But in Austria we have discussions on neutrality and if we're safe or if we're not safe. It's a favorite topic of discussion in Austrian politics.
Yeah. And I also imagine, there are limits as well in using innovation in warfare, because a recent study from the King's College said that in 95% of war-related scenarios, like where AI is making the military decision, it ends up in like nuclear strikes. So like AI opts more for escalation than human beings. Do you think, like, since we have seen the strikes of US in Iran led by AI, like that took proper decision, in the future you can foresee like an AI-related war disaster if we use more and more?
I hope not. I sincerely hope not. I do also look at the developments with concern. But I think Europe can also lead there with not going down that road. There's still a lot of innovation that we can drive that is not AI takes decisions on who lives and who dies.
Yeah. And I think, but there the trade-off is that if, for example, you use less AI while other military forces they use AI, you risk like to being in brackets less competitive militarily. So do you think where do you stand in this trade-off?
It's two different things, I would say. It's on the one hand having the capacity, having the knowledge, doing the innovation, and then on the other hand using it. And I would be very, very strongly against ever using this. Just the knowledge of itself, I don't see as critical, as you said. Otherwise, you fall behind. But using it, I think, would need more. A lot of cautiousness. I wouldn't be in favor.
And I was impressed, that it was opting more for escalation than human beings. I always thought something extremely rational. So for me, it was impressive, 95%.
I mean, AI is just like, it comes from human behavior as well. It studies human behavior and then it accelerates it. We've seen it online when there was an online profile, and how many hours did it take until it became a neo-Nazi and was sprouting out conspiracy theories? So it's, of course, technology as itself is supposed to be neutral, but the data that goes in is not.
It's human. It's a human input. I think that's a cool point. I should use less ChatGPT.
You should always use Le Chat from Mistral.
Sorry?
The European option.
Mistral. The European, of course, I use that. Less.
But even apart from the defense sector, startups, I think in general, struggle, as you said in the beginning, to really scale in Europe, to become big in Europe. And many of them, I think, argue, it's maybe a question of over-regulation, so too many rules in Europe. But is it really, or is it more a question of too much fragmentation between those rules?
I think the main issue is the fragmentation and the capital market. Yeah. But of course, I also see that there are certain regulations that could be scaled down, and we have it now in the European discussion as well with the omnibus initiatives. So in the digital field, the digital omnibus, and there are certain reporting duties that even those people working with GDPR and with data protection, even some data protection agencies have said certain reporting is too much. We can't scale it down because we now have the experience from the past years, which is fair. You have a regulation, you look at it, and then you adapt it. Scaling it down completely, I'm not a fan. I think we need to also look into civil rights, and I'm also a spokesperson for data protection. So
it's a tough trade-off to make.
It is. But that's why my speaker roles are quite interesting between digitization and data protection and consumer protection. But yeah, I do think that it goes hand in hand. The main point would be the fragmentation, but certain regulation.
So if you had to pick one main obstacle to innovation in Europe, it would be fragmentation.
Yes. And probably also that within Europe, we're not that risk enthusiastic.
In general,
I mean, here in Austria, we like to have our money in the bank where it stays until we retire or until we buy something. But having money in other fields of funding certain companies, startups, or.
And I think I read somewhere that in Europe there's an amount of, I think, 33 trillion in savings on bank accounts, which basically people put on the bank instead of investing in financial markets. So there's this gap of 33 trillion, which could be invested. I will check the figure to be sure, but it could be invested and are just lying idle, so to say, in banks.
And the thing is, the money doesn't get more in the bank. You do have a slight increase if you're lucky, but a lot of times with inflation, it just loses its value there. And if you invest, of course you have certain investments are more risky than others, but if you invest, you have the potential of it becoming more.
But so it seems that, because we read this many times about the fragmentation, so it seems that we do know what the problem is. So what stands in the way of doing what's necessary to get this thing rolling?
If only I know.
We tried.
Ask
maybe
probably those commissioners and prime ministers in charge. I think this discussion is, as you said, it's not new. We've had it for years and years, and ever since I've been politically active, I've heard this. And as I see it as my responsibility within Austria to continuously say we need less fragmentation, to also look at certain implementations of EU law that we don't make it extra difficult for companies that are established in another country to go to Austria or vice versa. But I do think we need a big reform in general on the EU level when it comes to all of these issues, including certain institutional reforms.
What I found interesting, from a communication perspective, like not having fragmentation, the impact on the daily life of citizens is a net positive according to several studies, not just for entrepreneurs but also to all citizens. But why there is not so much of this awareness among the EU population? It's an effort that still needs to be made a bit more.
Yeah, it always hurts me when I hear here in Austria we're net payers into the EU and we pay more euros in the EU than we get. I don't think this is true. I know this is not true because we create way more value for our economy, for the people, than just money going back. What if there was no EU? Then we would have to have trade agreements with all of the countries. We would be worse off. People would not be able to move anywhere without certain repercussions or difficulties.
Exactly, and and if you look at Brexit, for example, it's the best case study. It's a big country leaving the EU, and the economic numbers, well-being number, the UK citizens on average is poorer, but it's still something that I think it does not pass through that much.
No. And I think it, on the one hand, has to do with the responsibility also of us politicians, making it clearer what are the advantages, and also standing strong when there's a lot of EU critics out there, to say, yes, the EU is not perfect. We are NEOS is probably the most pro-EU party in Austria, but even we say we need to have reform there, but it's better than having nothing at all, and we have to really appreciate what has been created. And I also see the responsibility there within the EU institutions, because I can understand. I've lived in Brussels. I've moved to Austria. I can understand that the EU seems far away from here sometimes, but that daily life is really influenced by the EU, that certain products are the way they are because of the EU, more safe, that we have more bargaining power outside, so certain things are cheaper, and that certain jobs are just there because of the EU. And I don't mean EU jobs, but in the private sector.
Of course.
That we need to, the EU probably needs to make it more tangible within all of the countries, not just in the Brussels bubble.
Communicating, in your daily life, these things comes because there is a union of states.
It's also a question of which narrative wins in the competition of narratives, because obviously you said it's the responsibility of politicians to communicate that, but at the same time there are many political parties which are still arguing in the other direction. They're saying Brussels is the bureaucratic monster who overregulates our economy. Why is that narrative still so appealing?
It's Because it's easy in politics to say, oh, we have to take this decision because of Brussels, rather than actually taking accountability and saying, it's a tough decision, we have to take it, but life will get better then. I do think as politicians all across the spectrum, we just want to make life better. We have different definitions of how this better would look like, but as politicians, I think it's accountability that is most important. And if you just say Brussels again, it's people are angry at Brussels for things that that are decided by also their own people, because who is Brussels? Who are these institutions? It's MEPs that are elected by the people in the countries. It's the heads of states or ministers that discuss, and it's commissioners that are sent to Brussels and Strasbourg then. So it's really also the countries, and I think this gets forgotten a lot of times in the debate.
Yeah, and I think also in this competition of narratives, no, like it's easier to manipulate reality than to try to change complex things. Like, for example, the first lesson of my master was about the Brexit bus, no? Like they were saying the UK is spending billion, giving it to the EU. But then it was not given the other information, how much money were entering, no? Through the European Union. And this in social media happens a lot, no? Oversimplification, fake news, deep fakes, no? That really distort reality and makes it easier to criticize something than to change something that is still a net positive. So on the web, for example, now in Iran, I was watching on social media, it's really difficult to distinguish what is true between what is false. No, politically, like, what is your position there? Like, should we set a line at a certain point?
For certain things, it's easy to say this is true, this is false. If I say 0 degrees is, I don't know how much Fahrenheit. this is natural science. Yeah. But other things are more nuanced, and I think the least we have to do is give it some context. And I do look at the whole development of having less fact checking and moderation quite critically, because currently we see it all across Europe. Best example for this is Romania, how elections are influenced by social media and by fake news on social media without any moderation. And this is really, really scary. And I think we see how easy it can be to just have an army of bots that comment on certain things. I've seen it on my social media that when you have certain buzzwords, that all of a sudden it's certain people coming to your social media and defending certain things that don't seem to be real people.
But and there, like, the problem is who will fact check the fact checker, you know? Like, also there, like, do you think there is also a risk for democracy on the other side? If you let one authority to fact check what's on the news, if the authority, I don't know, pushes the narrative of one party, can also discard. Do you think this is something could happen, or?
I think the thing that needs to come before that, for me, this is something that has driven me throughout my political life. It's to enable people to look at things critically, to take decisions with their best knowledge, and their education is just a key part. If I'm well educated, if I have a skill set to critically look at certain things that I see online with AI, for example, this is now you have to think, is this a real picture? Is this a real video? Is this real audio? And all of that is easier when you have the tools to to look
so,
at
yeah.
it. And that I think we still lack a bit, and we need to push for it.
And some countries, I read this recently, I was quite surprised, is that I think it was Finland or Estonia, I forgot. So the countries which are close to the border to Russia, where there are higher amounts of fake news and disinformation going on, they actually already started doing basic information on fake news in elementary school.
Yep.
So kids start spotting what could be fake news in elementary school. And I think, for instance, on climate change, 25% more or less of information on the social media is generated by bots. And this will become more because it can be spread through AI.
Yeah.
So I do think that probably there should be a role of government to limit or to kind of at least manage this flow.
Yeah, I mean, on the EU level, there's currently discussions going on the EU Democracy Shield, which is exactly going into like how can we counteract these fake news that want to destroy our democratic processes, also harassment of politicians from or of people that are in the public eye. But one key aspect there again is literacy and media literacy. And we currently in Austria have this discussion as well, how to get media literacy better in schools. And I strongly think that without it, our democracy is doomed. But I'm very confident that we can manage.
What other school subjects should we cancel to make room for this?
Well, we have the discussion on Latin.
No, why?
So out with the ancient
Latin.
wisdom and.
But just in one type of school.
Okay.
But it's not cut completely. So the plans are to have it from 12 to 8 hours.
Okay.
Cut.
So not full cut of
No,
Latin.
no. But it's
I
just
love
the things change. Also,
course.
what you need in your life and what it means to be a self-sufficient and critical thinker changed because of technology. And I need to know how algorithms work, how deep fakes work, how to look at media, and be aware that there's not just actors that want to inform us, but also actors that want to influence us.
Yeah, and do you think that here as European Union education system, we are doing a good job there, like in educating the new generation with the skills they will need for the future? Or are we still a bit stuck in a world that does not really exist anymore?
I mean, I can only speak for Austria right now, as of course every country has their own education system, and we do see a lot of differences how to tackle these issues. In Austria, for the past year, my party was able to have the Minister of Education, and we have certain things that we were able to do. For example, get phones out of classes, so have smartphone-free classrooms, which they're very well received by parents and students, but also get middle management, so the administrative work is out of schools, out of the teachers' full plates. And these are the small things, and now we're going also in the big areas as to what do we teach children. And like I said, media literacy is key there.
And you think also data literacy as well is there, like the capacity to understand data, algorithms, and so on?
Yes. One of the subjects proposed to introduce new is informatics and AI, which also has these data systems, and it's data is key to what decisions are taken afterwards with AI through algorithms, and knowing what is behind that, and at least having some understanding of that it does matter what data is given in, how it's weighed. I think is key, and I hope that the next generation will know all of that.
And so, but you said that your party is now in government, so it's part of the governing coalition. So you actually do have the privilege now to move Austria forward. What are your personal, or at least your party priorities during this mandate? Where do you want to get?
Well, we have the Minister of Education, and my party is very strongly pro getting our education system into the 21st century, making big reforms. It's not always easy. There's pushbacks, of course, but we want to have a big reform there to just enable children to be equipped for all the challenges that we now have that we didn't have 10, 20, 30 years ago. And another thing that we're quite vocal on is a big state reform. So Austria, it's we do have a lot of responsibilities, but not as much accountability then. So every level has their own fields of what they can do, should do. And one example is actually in the education sector. So when you have an elementary school, the local level is responsible for paying for the house. Then the state level is responsible for the teachers there and for in certain parts for what is taught. And then the next level, the federal, the national level, is responsible for paying other teachers, the teachers partly, and also what is taught there. And it's all a mix-up. And we've set our very high goal to have a real reform partnership where we put all of the local, regional, and national actors together to sit down and get some. Like a convention to get in different fields, from education to health, to also digitization, and how we want to have our administration structured. All of that, and in the next year we'll have the first results.
Ambitious, and probably also for the economy, I guess, no? Because actually we were very surprised reading that in the forecast, Austria is set to only grow like 0.9% next year, which is worse than the classic worst scholars in Europe, like Italy and Spain, are forecasted to do better. So what is wrong at the moment with the Austrian economy?
Well, we did take over when Austria was very much in debt. So we do have. We had to get our budget together because in the past years, with all the crises, money didn't matter. It was just given back. It was given to people, and we had things like the climate bonus, where every person, regardless of their socioeconomic background, got the same amount. The CEO got 150 something euros, just like the mother of 3 without a partner, and this is not the way that we decided to go. So we had to roll back a lot of those things, and it wasn't easy. Cuts are never easy, but I truly believe that. It also gives us the chance to push for some reforms that have been delayed because it has always worked. Why change something? And my party is very much pro changing and reforming. So
cuts, I mean, are neither popular, no.
Never.
It's the most unpopular thing that you can do in politics, no.
But we had to do it. So
of course,
because we had billions of. We were billions in the minus, and it's the money that we're missing in the future for innovation, for education, and if we don't take steps now, we know, like in Austria, we have a big issue with pensions. Currently, a lot of the budget actually goes to pensions in addition to the funds that workers, employees already pay in. It's not enough, and we have to take some reforms there, because if we don't, then in the future we won't have any leeway to
people
invest.
get older, so the pension
They do, yes. Fortunately,
not getting
Fortunately, they get older, but we have seen that the factual pension age, it has stayed the same, but the life expectancy has risen extremely since the 1970s, and which is good, but you also need to be frank then and say, well, then you need to look at other ways of funding the pension, maybe heightening increasing the pension age.
And in Italy we should be master at this. No, we are the worst. And I was looking at your mug as well, coffee, tea, and liberalism.
Yeah,
it's a cool one.
Coffee, tea, or liberalism and liberalism.
You have to choose, or you can take all three of them. All three.
Well, liberalism means you're free to do whatever you want.
So you can then actually
coffee.
take both.
Exactly. No,
you want to mix it.
Yeah. And first of all, thanks a lot, because this episode has been super cool. But usually you are moving Austria at the moment, but we try to move Europe a bit from a communication perspective. And if you can think about Europe in 10 years, what success does look like for you? Like one thing.
One thing. I think if Europe in 10 years is more confident, because it's less dependent, it's more sovereign, it has good partnerships, good agreements with new partners, old partners, and it can decide on its own future, then I do think I'm quite happy if youth stays here, great ideas stay here, and I can say then that the EU truly is a place for opportunities, then I'm happy.
Will we get there?
I surely hope so. That's if I don't believe that, then I would not be in politics anymore. I think this is what drives me to just change it for the better.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's just the right now that makes all of it. Now, like the motivation.
Yeah, I always say, if I stop being motivated and if I stop really believing that I can make a difference, then my time in politics should be up.
Yeah, we hope not. So thanks a lot,
Ines.
Thank you.
See you.